All right, my friends, let's get back at it. We're doing one video a day for the first 100 days of 2025. Let's go. We are easily 20 plus videos. I think what this is video number 23 into it. So we're just chugging along. But I am super excited about today's video because I'm going to introduce to you guys the greatest influence in my real estate career. And I'm looking forward. If you know who he is, already, if you've been here for more than a minute, you know who I'm about to talk about. But I'm excited for you to get to hear a little bit about him. So who I'm referring to is Peter Fortunato. And Peter Fortunato is, he's been investing since 1965, and he's still actively investing, right now in, here we are, 2025. He's still actively investing. Look, in 2024, I did 9 deals with him, and they were hands down some of the most crave deals in my entire career of 10 years, right? Which doesn't seem much when you look at his 60 years, right? In real estate. And so, ultimately, at 60 years in real estate, he has seen a lot. And Pete specializes in the creative finance world, and many, myself included, but many people consider him the most prolific deal maker throughout the country. Y'all, when I'm telling you that man's mind's at a different level, love Pete, but there's many days where people, the running joke I have with some friends and people who attend his classes, it's that there often should be a table in the back that said, what did he actually say? Whenever Pete teaches, right? Because again, his brain, the guy is wickedly smart. Um, so let's dive into it. I want to give you 5 lessons he's taught me. It was super hard to narrow them down, but I just want to give you 5 that uh, you can kind of glean from. But let me say this: he is considered the most prolific deal maker, right? And many people would argue the most prolific deal maker in America. And one of the biggest things is that most people get really caught up on his techniques. He has very advanced. I'm talking not creative finance 101. I'm like 1001, right? Like for sure a very advanced level of creative financing that Pete operates at. And so many people get caught up trying to understand the deals that he structures. As I mentioned, the deals I did with him last year, again, were some of the most advanced I'd ever done. And yeah, my attorneys really loved working through these because, they were challenging, yet effective. So, but most people go to him and they kind of get stuck on the technique part, right? Maybe because they're not used to doing deals at that level, or they're just like, yeah, but I want to know how. And they really kind of want almost to have their brain like Pete to be able to structure deals like him. And I'll be very honest, that's what everyone kind of goes to him for. But after, years of consistently learning from Pete, spending multiple weeks throughout the year with him, learning from him as much as I possibly can. One of the biggest things, and for those of you who had the chance to watch my podcast that I did with him at his house over in St. Petersburg, Florida, one of the biggest things that I realized is that more than he has taught me about technique, the biggest takeaway, the biggest impact he's ever had on my real estate investing career has been his philosophy around real estate. It's how he approaches the deal, how he approaches the people in the deal, and how he approaches it all together. That has been super impactful. So, because that has been my biggest impact from him, yes, he has made me a hell of a deal maker. He's made me such a better deal maker. But I truly believe that he can impact everyone on the how he approaches real estate side. So let's jump into those. That's what I'm going to center my 5 lessons from Pete Fortunato around, is the philosophical side. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into. Let me actually introduce you to him through a photo. So this is his website. You can see right here. If you're just listening on your podcast stream, this is going to be one of those situations where, because we do visual as well, I am on his website, peterfortunato.com. Don't get excited. It is a very simple website. And so Pete's been investing since 1965. Again, still very active today. You can see a photo of him here. This is actually him. I don't even know when this photo is from, but I know it was from a few years ago. And his infamous tie, the one that he loves to, usually in the first day that he speaks, he usually wears it. But my first lesson from Pete Fortunato that I want to share with you is his benefits house. So if you see right here, this is a little drawing of a house that has eight eight different benefits of it. So you've got growth, profits, cash flow management, amortization, tax benefits, use, and security. One of the biggest things Pete has taught me is just really the power of the benefits of real estate. And this demonstration started, many years ago. He's had this um, visual. And when I tell you it's impacted my deal making, truly, I've got it here at my office. I've got it. There's this kind of like this binder thing that I do a lot of my underwriting in. I have it in there. It is a very strong reminder for me every time I'm thinking about structuring a deal. When I'm looking at stuff, I go back to this. And one of the tips that he gave is, knowing the different benefits can help you when you're negotiating, whether it's with a seller, a business partner, a private money lender, you name it. And you can say, hey, one of the best things you can do is find out what the other party wants, and then whatever is left, that'll be something that'll be easy for you to negotiate in the deal, and for you to take what's left. And so love this. Very, very beneficial for me. It's shaped a lot of my deal making. Knowing the benefits of real estate, deals get done when people, what is being offered is better than they currently have. And so understanding the benefits, again, really a lot of sales is just people understanding the benefit of what's being offered to them. So very powerful. All right, I'm gonna stop my screen share here. All right, so the second tip I want to give you is the question that is most famously associated with Pete. And this is one that I would encourage each and every single one of you to write down, take it to heart, memorize it, and that when you are meeting with the seller, this should be a common question that you repeat when you're meeting someone for the first time, which is, why would you sell such a nice house as this? And when you're doing that, really what you're doing is you're saying, hey, why would you sell such a nice house like this? And then you shut up. What that does is that obviously it gives them an opportunity to talk and really share through what you should be thinking through and focused on, which is their motivation. Why are they selling this house? And that can help you understand, what are they looking for, right? Maybe that can help you understand what benefit in real estate they're trying to seek, either through owning this property or getting rid of it. Now, as Pete has admittedly said, sometimes you stand in front of a house and it's not such a nice house. So maybe you have to change that adjective there into, what would have you why would you sell such an interesting house like this? But ultimately, guys, it's to find out a seller's motivation, and that is critical. So that goes in touch with my third lesson from Pete Fortunato, and that kind of flows right into it. And this has been paramount. Pete, he said, Courtney, you really only have two jobs in this life. And he said, if you can, understand this and really embody this, you can really keep the deals flowing, which is we have two roles. Our job is to ask for help and to help others, right? And so they've got to go hand in hand, right? And truly, by being a helper, by helping other people, again, that helps gets deals done. But then there's always going to be a level where you're going to need help as well. You know, Pete famously jokes that when, like for example, a seller needs help, they need to sell a house quickly because, they're moving to go be with their kids, and there's this opportunity to buy a house right next door to their kids' house a few states away. So they need to sell their house today to be able to lock in that other property. And so they need, 150,000 today. And you're like, hey, I want to help, but you're 150,000 light. Well, so your job is to, number one, help that seller, but then you also have to learn how to ask for help. So then you could go and ask a financial friend for the 150,000 so that you could then help the seller. And that really, if you take all of what I do as a real estate investor and you boil it down, that is the two hats I wear. It is helping others and then asking for help and knowing how to shift between the two. And that's how deals get done. Truly, that is how deals get done, right? And so that's so critical. Please don't be an investor who all you do is maybe you're like, hey, Courtney, I do want to help people, but I don't really do well asking for help. Understand that's critical for you to succeed. You are going to have moments where you lack, where you can't do it all yourself, where again you're light for money or whatever. And understand it takes a level of you really being, tapping into this concept will truly help you again do more deals. Let me give you the fourth lesson that Pete Fortunato has taught me, which is, man, when he first taught me this lesson, I'll be very honest, I almost always, and guilt is not the right word, but accountability might be it. It's this concept of staying in touch with the sellers you've helped before. Why? Because they've already seen you demonstrate and that you've already kept your promise. I really feel like I could have like 100 more lessons here, but one of the things Pete talks about is that his greatest currency is not money, it's promises. Well, that seller has seen you operate and really fulfill, make a promise and keep it. And so who's your biggest ally? It's the people who have already seen you make, make a promise and keep it. And so by staying in touch with sellers, you're able to then help them down the line and over life. So he's been doing this business for 60 years. He had four families that he's done over 70 deals with. Like that is so freaking powerful, right? And so understand this, you can constantly try to drum up new business, but there is something to be said about staying in touch with the sellers that you've helped. And so I always, when I hear him talk about that, I always get convicted, and I want that accountability to be able to go back to the sellers who I've helped and be able to stay in touch with them so that they can think of me to help other people when they hear them, whether it's, they need help again some other time in life, whether it's, a friend of theirs needs help, whatever that may be. And so let me go into the fifth lesson from Peter Fortunato. When I first met him, I started in Mississippi. I met a man named Leon Johnson out of near Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I was at Leon's house, and I'd heard of him, but it was the first day I was meeting him, and I was enthralled with Leon that day. I mean, something in me stood up, and I was like, man, Leon Johnson, this man is doing real estate how I want to do real estate. Forget the Lamborghini dudes on YouTube. That is not what I want. This is what I want. And I spent a lot of time with Leon that day, and I'm so thankful. That day changed the trajectory of my life. But that day at their house, at Leon's house outside of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, toward the end of the day, Leon says, hey, Courtney, you know what? I'm going to a seminar in a few weeks, and you should come. It's in Atlanta, and it was like in 2 weeks. And basically, he was telling me to jump, and I'm like, in what direction? So I go book my flight, or I either drove or booked my flight, and I definitely booked a ticket, and I went. And that was I didn't know what I was going to get myself into. I had at that point had already paid for education in real estate, so I was not against real estate education. But because Leon was saying it, because I had grown to have so much respect for Leon, I was just like, if Leon's going and Leon is telling me to go, I'm going. Well, I would wake up early, as I normally do. I wake up and I would go down for breakfast, and I would have breakfast with Leon. And what I realized was I was actually having breakfast with one of the speakers of the event. And so I'm all like, let me sit up straight. Let me like let me behave, like all this stuff. And I'm thinking, what's the big question that I can ask this speaker at this conference? There's only two speakers. What can I ask one of them? And this is the one that everyone's like oohing and awing over. And it was Peter Fortunato who was sitting at breakfast with us that day. And so I'm gonna ask him. I'm an avid book reader, so I'm like, you know what? When you meet someone wiser than you and wealthier than you, I'm gonna say, hey, I go, Mr. Fortunato, um, do you mind if I ask, do you recommend any books that I should read? And or, what types of books do you read? I think that's how I phrased it. What types of books do you read? He simply shrugged his shoulders and he goes, seminar books. And I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what he meant until I went to the class. And for those of you watching, bear with me. You'll see it right behind me as I have all these binders, anywhere from a 2 to a 4-inch binder. And let me find the one. This was the binder from that class, and let me see. Well, it doesn't say how many pages, but I think, yeah, it doesn't say how many pages. It's easily a 200 to 300 page manual. If you look here, this is a big old binder. And what you got here is What Box, Bill Cook and Peter Fortunato. Peter Fortunato is in the white shirt here. This is again, a 2 to 3 inch, no, it's a 3 to 4 inch binder. And it was the manual from the class. And this was in 2019. And this is my first introduction to Pete Fortunato. So at this point, we're going on almost 6 years ago. And this class impacted me greatly. So one of the biggest things that it taught me was, number one, that there's actually seminars out there that give you a freaking manual in a like a textbook manual, right? It's not just the slideshows or whatever, but it's a impressive level of a manual. Um, but then when I asked him, what books do you read? He goes, well, I read, seminar manuals. And then I went to his house, and if you've watched, and I'll link this at the end of the video, if you've actually watched the podcast that I did with him at his house, you know, prior to the recent hurricane, where he had damage, he had these binders lined up all throughout his living room, and he taught me the power of, don't just go to a class, sit through the weekend class, and then be like, that's the last time I'm going to review this material. He's like, go back through it, read through it. You know, again, I'm trying not to add like 20 other lessons that he's taught me, but I have basically made it a goal that anytime Pete's speaking, I'm in the room. Like, that's pretty much my goal at this point. He's my greatest influence. With him being 77, I do not know how much longer we will be graced with his presence here in this life. But for sure, his impact will continue to be great. And so I'm just committed to being in the room with him. I cannot tell you, like, yes, I've heard him from the stage, but I have equally sat next to him as a student in rooms. And again, you would think 60 plus years in this business, this man has, arrived. No, he goes to a seminar once a month, literally still. Sometimes he says he cheats and he's a speaker. So he reviews these notes. When I'm sitting next to him and I'm watching him take notes, I'm like, Pete, you are like the biggest note taker in this room, but yet you're the most prolific deal maker. And it has encouraged me to never stop being a student. And so, without, again, making this, 20 lessons by Peter Fortunato, um, man, going back and reviewing these manuals, I tell my loved ones all the time that if we had a fire, I would easily break one of these windows and I'd just be throwing these binders out because they're that important to me. With that being said, if you don't know who Peter Fortunato is, please, I'm going to link my podcast episode with him. That one was a very special moment for me to get to interview him in his house in St. Petersburg. Please get informed. The number one way that I like to introduce people to Pete, as far as an educator goes, obviously my podcast is an easy, a little bit around an hour introduction. But if you're like, hey, I want to actually learn more from this guy, you know, in April. So in April, you've got there's a class that he does. And now Pete is not, he does not have a YouTube channel. He does not have a TikTok, none of that. But he co-teaches a class. So Pete teaches twice a year in his own workshop. Those are in June and December in Tampa. But in April, he co-teaches with John Schaub, who is one of my other top 3 mentors down in Tampa. And their class is going to be April 5th and 6th, 2025 in Tampa, Florida. Literally, it's houses, lenders, management, financing, investment strategies. So it costs literally, it's a very powerful class. It's my favorite way to introduce people to Pete, because Pete can take what's simple and make it complicated. Well, John is a fantastic communicator, and John's been investing since the 70s. You know, John takes what's complicated, makes it simple. So it's my favorite introduction. Guys, the ticket's like $5.95 a person. You have to get down to Tampa. I will be there. I have easily brought, there's years where I bring 20 plus people to this class. I'm gonna be there as a student, so you'll see me in the room taking notes. And so come on down if you're available, if you want to learn more about Peter Fortunato. I'm going to link that in the show notes. You can go to johnschaub.com and get your ticket. And if you're going, hit me up. I'd be happy to meet you. I'd be happy to say hi. It is, again, one of my favorite ways to introduce people to Peter Fortunato. And it's a fantastic class. Like, literally, it's a must attend for me as an investor every year. They give great current timeline information, fantastic for people in the real estate industry, especially if you want to hear from people who've been in the industry for decades and they specifically speak to what they see going on in the market. So, guys, this is one video a day for the first 100 days in 2025. I am so thankful for the impact that Peter Fortunato has had on my life, and I hope that in just a small way, I can share that with you guys. If anything, he is one of the giants. I have the privilege of standing on his shoulders and continuing the message. So if you enjoy how I talk about real estate or anything like that, understand a lot of that comes from the likes of Peter Fortunato. And so thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is one video a day for the first 100 days in 2025. I will see you guys tomorrow, and check the show notes for some of the things I talked about in today's video.